It's a renunciation of sex, obviously, alcohol, drugs, meat. You would imagine that the sensual pleasure would have been hard because I was a 25-year-old woman, but God was so kind to me.
When you renounce, when you take monkhood, you have to leave a lot of things. You have to follow a lot of different rules, regulations. What was the hardest thing to leave personally for you?
It's a renunciation of sex, obviously. You take vows of celibacy. All forms of, sensual pleasures. It's a renunciation of a sense of personal ownership. So who you are, what you have, every minute, every moment is offered to the universe, like a yagna. Idam namam, not for me, but for you. Not for me, but for you.
From selfishness to selflessness.
Exactly. And it's a renunciation of a personal tie in a way to a family, but it's not a renunciation of the family itself so much as the world then becomes your family. So it's not a matter of I'm in seva of the whole world, except those who gave me birth. It's not excluding them, but it's an expansion beyond attachment to that family and an expansion into an awareness that the world is your family. It's obviously a renunciation of things that a lot of people renounce other than sannyasis. Alcohol, drugs, meat, all of that kind of stuff. But as it was, I had been a vegetarian since childhood. Renouncing, that was super easy. So none of the things I had to renounce actually were difficult. You would imagine that the sensual pleasure would have been hard because I was a 25-year-old woman. But God was so very beautiful and so very graceful and kind to me, because from the moment I came here, from the moment I stood on the banks of Ganga and had this incredibly powerful spiritual experience, it was like God came through me with, a vacuum cleaner or a dust buster or something with those long extensions that can get into the little nooks and corners, and actually sucked out of me all of that desire for everything that this monastic life was not going to include. Everything ranging from sex to bagels and everything in between. Like, here's what your life used to include, here's what it's not going to include anymore. And the desire for all of it just felt like it was pulled out of me. Wow. Yeah, it was a very great blessing.
Yeah, and that's like most people fear to go on this path because of leaving those things. So definitely. And that's why I always say that monks are the most ambitious, because they're achieving something that's eternal, right? It's not something temporary.
Well, but you also should realize you don't have to be a monastic celibate in order to have a deep spiritual life. You don't have to be a sannyasi to be a very deeply spiritual person, or even to attain self-realization or God realization or moksha. I mean, you look at our scriptures, they're full of all of these sages, rishis, yogis, even divine incarnations who are householders.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And that kind of leads me to talking about the 4 principles of, essentially there's stages of our life. A lot of people say, if you have like a lifespan of 100, which is hypothetical, you spend 25 years in
Brahmacharya.
yeah.
Yes.
It's like artha, kama, dharma, moksha, right? Those are the...
So those are what we call the 4 goals, purusharth. But the actual 4 ashrams of life, because these 4 goals of life don't necessarily have to go sequentially. It's not like a checkbox, did over. Absolutely. But the 4 ashrams of life go sequentially. So you begin with Brahmacharya. That's the first 25 years. Those are your student years. Your dharma in those years is study. Study and learn in school and in life. And it's why we actually have a tradition of a Gurukul tradition. So that it's not just I study reading, writing, arithmetic, but we study scriptures, we study divine teachings. And we study in life, we study who we really are. Right? It's that awareness of who am I, the beginning of our spiritual practice. We then move into the Grihastha ashram phase, the householder phase, where your dharma is in the family. It's to make money and have a career and raise children and give them sanskaras and to fulfill your role as a householder. And then the next 25 years, from around age 50 to 75 in this beautiful 100-year lifespan, is the Vanprastha ashram phase. Meaning your children are grown, they're already married or they're going to be getting married soon, but they no longer need you. They're educated, they're set, they'll take care of themselves. It's no longer about making money, getting ahead. It's now about starting to pull away from the full engagement in things of the world into more of a spiritually renounced life. Moving more and more, typically they describe it as forest dwellers, but it doesn't actually have to be a forest dweller. But it means metaphorically that we are pulling out of the things of the world into the more spiritual life. And then the last phase is sannyas, which is that final phase before leaving the body of a total renunciation of the things of the world and a full dedication to the inner path. But these purusharth, the goals, arth and kam and dharma and moksha. Yes, of course, arth and kam are going to be much more in the first 2 phases, obviously. Nobody's talking about arth and kam in Vanprastha and sannyas phase. But dharma is there throughout. You've got dharma in all 4 of the phases, but just your dharma changes. And moksha, well, moksha is possible in all of the phases. Moksha is that ultimate liberation, freedom. But if you find yourself at the final stage and you haven't experienced it yet, well, then you better get serious. But it's not that you have to wait until you're in the sannyas phase to experience it. In your brahmacharya phase, in your grihastha ashram phase, as I was saying before, you don't have to be a sannyasi to have a deep spiritual experience in life. Exactly.